friend Congressman Adam Kinzinger taking time out of his day. Congressman, good morning to you.
What is up, my friend?
How you doing this morning?
Man, you have had just quite a morning, it sounds like.
It's Congress morning this morning.
It is Congress morning. That's everybody's favorite morning.
I think it ought to be anyway. Spent some time with Randy Hultgren. Now you're with us as well. It's reaction time. I read your reaction, but I'd rather hear it from you. The president yesterday said, all right, this Iran deal is no deal. Yeah,
look, it's the right thing to do. I think the president would have been fine if he said, we're going to keep it in place, but go for things. But here's the problem with that. And, what you'll hear from folks on the left especially is, this makes us less safe. And, at least we had the nuclear behavior buttoned up. Well, that's true. We had the nuclear behavior buttoned up for about 8 more years, which, by the way, 8 years ago was 2010, if you realize how quickly 8 years goes by. But you think about what the problem is. The problem is the leverage that we had against Iran. Sanctions, bringing everybody involved in that, making it tough for their economy, not allowing them to sell oil on the open market, which now they do about 1 million barrels per day, which brings billions of dollars to their economy. We had given all that back to Iran in exchange for the nuclear deal. The problem is, if people want to negotiate Iran's behavior in the Middle East, whether it's in Syria against Israel or elsewhere, we had no leverage because it was all given up in the nuclear deal. So what the president has done by this is said, not just are we going to negotiate the nuclear side of what's going on, we are also going to negotiate with the fact that you've killed, close to 500,000 people in Syria by enabling Bashar al-Assad. You are giving weapons to Hezbollah. Some indications are that they're planning a strike against Israel. You've destabilized Yemen, and you've killed 1/4 of the troops that Americans lost in Iraq was because of Iran. So this is the president saying, we're going to negotiate with the same tools, a bigger deal for us, and I think it's the right thing.
Well, it kind of breaks down to, all right, you can do nuclear weapons and terrorism, or you can have an economy. Which one do you want to go with?
Yeah, and it's saying the same thing to our allies. The Europeans have never been, tough. Let's just be clear. They're our allies, but they've never been the ones that want to confront anything.
When they look at Iran as a market.
Yeah, well, that's true. They look at Iran as a market, but now they're going to have to choose. Do you want to do business with the United States of America, or do you want to do business with Iran? And I think all of them are going to pick the United States of America, whether it pleases them or not. And so this is the president basically saying, and those that would say also, well, this sends a message to North Korea that we can't be trusted, is laughable for 2 reasons. We have no reason to trust North Korea because they've given us their word and violated it many times. So North Korea could come out and say, well, now we don't trust the United States. That's fine. I could care less if they trust us. In fact, it's probably better that neither of us trust each other, because now we're going to get a deal with North Korea that we will have for sure and for certainty no nuclear weapons in North Korea. Because if we both all just trusted each other, we end up with the same situation that happened in '94 when Jimmy Carter miraculously showed up with a deal out of Pyongyang, and what has happened, frankly, everywhere else.
Yeah, and over and over and over again. And when you point at North Korea, especially, you got 3 hostages coming home from North Korea with Mike Pompeo.
Yep. Well, that's what it seems like. And, I'm always nervous to put the cart before the horse on North Korea, because I don't want people to get, to this idea that somehow he's changed his tone. I think he is. I think Kim Jong-un is. But I think this is the moment. There will either be, this is my prediction, there will either be a deal, which I think is more likely than not, or there will be military action. I don't think there's any in between it. So, and I think Kim Jong-un knows that. I think the president has made it clear to him. I have personally met with the president on this issue, and can tell you he's very serious about it. I think Kim Jong-un knows that, and it goes to show diplomacy works only when backed by a credible threat of military force, which the Obama administration never was willing to make a credible threat of military force in Iran. Iran knew that, and they took us for granted.
Well, especially, when you look at the Syrian red line, what does that tell the hardliners in Iran?
Yeah, it tells, there was nothing. Look, here's the most frustrating thing, I think, that goes on right now, is there is this perception in the media that somehow, President Trump is under the thumb of Russia. Okay, fine. Let's say that they believe that, and I think they do believe that. Well, it's interesting because if the president was under the thumb of Russia, he would not have bombed Syria. He would not have given lethal weapons to Ukraine. In fact, he would not have done all these things that the Russians don't want him to do. He would have actually been their client state. But he has been one of the most hawkish anti-Russian presidents, despite the fact that he doesn't really ever tweet against Putin. but has been one of the most hawkish anti-Russian presidents. So you have the left-wing media that'll say things like, oh, he tweets so harshly against Kim Jong-un, or he said things like fire and fury. Well, you know what? Sometimes when you have a stick and you're willing to use it, we can get better peace deals. And Barack Obama spoke a really good line, with the exception of telling Mitt Romney that 1950 wanted their foreign policy back and telling the Russian foreign minister that wait till the election, I'll have more flexibility. For God's sakes, people forget that. But Barack Obama would talk a good line but do nothing.
And that's what's going on. And now there's a severe case of butt hurt going on over this whole rejection of this horrible deal to begin with, which, if it was such a great deal, why didn't you run it through the Senate?
That's it. You know, you could have made this basically a treaty. And if this was a treaty, I'm sure we wouldn't have broken it, you know, if it was a treaty. But basically all this was, and Ben Sass said it well on his Twitter, I saw it this morning, he said, or a statement he made, which is, look, all this was Barack Obama giving his word. And that only lasts as long as the presidency. The president is out, and since they never ran it through Congress, Trump has come in and said, yeah, I'm not going to hold to that word anymore because I didn't negotiate this deal and I want a better one.
Right, but had it had the imprimatur of Congress on it, well, that would be a different story.
That's right. That's absolutely right. So this is, I think, you know, regardless of what happens, I mean, diplomacy and this kind of thing is not a science, it's an art. But I think this is definitely pushing back against Iran in the region, no doubt. I think Iran realizes now that they're in a much weaker position. And I think this is going to put us in a better position to really confront the evil that is beyond the nuclear weapons thing. Nuclear weapons, it's simply a symptom of a bad Iran. It's not the whole issue.
Well, and, you know, if they were such great guys who were being wronged in this deal, the whole chanting death to America and torching the flag on the on the floor of their legislative body probably wouldn't be the best look.
Yeah, and I just saw that this morning, and I'm like, well, I'm so, I mean, I never want to see the flag burn, but I'm so glad, in essence, that it happened, because it reminds people that these were never our friends. We have this idea that somehow the Iranian people are great, but we had this idea that somehow the Iranian government has, you know, this newfound, you know, Jesus, and it's not the case. I mean, they still hate us. They hate Israel. Israel's little Satan, and we're big Satan.
Yeah, and after the slideshow put together by Mr. Netanyahu of a week or so back, I'm sure his status of number one hated guy went really up. Yep.
He's now medium Satan. We're still big Satan.
And once again, kudos to whoever pulled this off. Who gets into a hidden nuclear facility and drives a truck out with 1,000 pounds of documents and gets away with it and makes it back to Israel?
It's pretty awesome. When I was watching that, I'm like, oh, that's just basically Israel showing their biceps and being like, we just punched you, knocked you down, kicked you in the face, and we took your watch.
Yeah, and by the way, now we're going to do a little press conference on it and have a laugh at the same time. I mean, that was simply an astounding bit of espionage.
Yeah, it was. And, you know, the other thing that's pretty amazing is yesterday, and I don't know if this was confirmed, but at least was seeing reports that Israel struck Iranian targets in Syria. And, you know, this is a very, I don't want to say a frightening situation, but it's really close to a powder keg, because if the Iranians have given the order to their proxy, Hezbollah, to attack Israel, Israel has said, we will attack every Iranian target in Syria. This could escalate quickly, and Israel has an inherent right to defend themselves.
Absolutely, and are tested on a regular basis.
Yep.
I know there's lots of other things in the world to discuss, but getting your reaction on that one with your expertise in foreign policy and all that, that was priority number one.
Awesome.
I appreciate you taking time out of your day for us.
Anytime. I appreciate it. Have a good one.